yeah, like a lot of players here in Holland, I started in a brass band. You know, that was already in the 60s when I was like, no, early 70s I think, when I was like 10 or 11 years old. But I didn't start on trombone, but on trumpet and cornet and um, how do you call it? Flugelhorn,
Oh, yeah.
you know, those kind of instruments. What was needed. But when I was 17, the director of the band said, like, you want to play trombone, but not the valve one with the pistons, but the slide trombone. I said, yeah, let me try that. And yeah, I liked it immediately. So that meant, yeah, I had to study a lot, learn new readings because it's in F clef instead of G. So that took me a while. I had years I didn't know the name of a note, or I had to really think about it. You know, I was only thinking this is this position. You know, second position, blah blah blah. Yeah, but in half a year I already could play with them. Yeah, and it was one of the best brass bands in Holland, or it's called fanfare, which is only yeah, you have two types of marching bands. It's fanfares and a harmony orchestra, and the harmony orchestra is with clarinets and woodwinds, you know, and sometimes even hobo and bassoon, things like that. But the fanfare, the so-called fanfare, that's only trumpets, trombones, what is it? Yeah, without woodwinds.
Yeah.
So yeah, brass. And yeah, we were a very good one, and also with mixed people, like older generation and younger generation. And I come from a family from my mother's side where everybody played music. So it was like kind of normal to pick up an instrument, and yeah, and still my nephews, they play, and yeah, my brother and sister, they also still play, but I'm the only one who really became professional, and even the kids of my sister and brother, they play again, you know. That's or they sing, you know. Yeah, it's always music.
Yeah.
But improvising I always did already when I picked up the instrument. I didn't know it was called improvising, but yeah, I didn't like the exercises so much, you know, and I could play them anyway after looking at them. Like I could do it immediately, you know. Or when it was a little bit complicated, I had to figure it out, and then I could play it. But you know. So I had a lot of time of yeah, just figuring out other things, you know, and in those times there wasn't, of course, not so much TV and radio, but I was living in the east. I was born in the east of the country, and we could have German TV. And they had fantastic jazz programs and pop music. I was more interested in pop music, but gradually I shifted to jazz because, yeah, and extremer pop music, you know. So that was all in the 70s, I think, and there was a city called Deventer where I went with my friends to check out jazz concerts on a Sunday afternoon, and yeah, I think I was 17 or 18 years old, still in school, you know, because I started with how do you call it, HAVO. It's like a high school, but when you have HAVO, you couldn't go to university, and I didn't know what I wanted, so I thought, oh, I do Atheneum, which is like gymnasium, but without Latin and Greek, you know, and then you could stream. When you finish that one, you could go to the to university. So that's what I did. I went to Groningen to study something very stupid, like human geography. I didn't know anything else I wanted to do, so I thought like, oh, let me try that. But I already was playing in a school band in Deventer, you know, with two people of my class, or actually I was they were in a lower class, but they asked me. They knew that I was playing trombone, and they said like, hey, let's start a group, and we. That was like in the middle 70s, I think. So I was still like 18, 19 years old. I just played 1 year trombone, something like that. And it was fantastic. I was also singing in that band, and we were making our own tunes. You know, very. Actually, I improvised my lines. You know, but when you repeat a piece. You end up by kind of a fixed thing, because you know there was like a guitar player and a bass player who played chords or a riff or whatever, you know, and I could play something else, and it was fantastic. So that's and for me that was a natural thing to improvise. So and via that band, let me check this out. Oh, good. Later. But so this was still when I was in school, and then I went to university, and I got a tip like bring your trombone in the introduction week, because you can do anything. There's like little groups you can join, and there was like one of the things I saw like, oh, a workshop improvisation for musicians. So that's where I went. And it was given by a Canadian guy living there already for years, Alan Lorillard. He's from, I think, originally from Vancouver, but also with Dutch roots or something. His mother's family, something like that. And he was giving workshops there, and I met him, and I joined the workshop, and there were also other people interested in me immediately, like a trombone player checking out the new coming in musicians. So from day one on, I was locked in this music scene. So they asked immediately, oh, can you come tomorrow to a rehearsal of the workshop orchestra? Yeah. So it was already before I started studying, you know, the weeks before. And one of and they said like, yeah, in 2 weeks we have a gig in Amsterdam, can you also come, in the BIM House? That was like 1977, and the BIM House opened in, I think, 74, so it was the old one, the really funky one. And I already knew like, oh wow, that's the famous club in Amsterdam. Like, wow, I was like really excited. So yeah, I played with them immediately. You know, like two times rehearsals, and immediately soloing, and you know, this whole shit.
Yeah.
So that was So.
What kind of music was that group playing?
Jazz, but not standards, but the own pieces of Alan Lorillard. It was a little bit based on chord schemes, but not like bebop, not at all. A little bit Mingus-like, and how can I say it? Yeah, maybe ICP also. That was already coming up. Like, so it was also a nice mix of people. There were also the older generation in that band, and also younger people like me, and some could play really well, and others, you know, and they wanted, of course, the best players to join the thing. And every year, of course, there were new students streaming in, and then they had a new band or a new workshop orchestra. But and during that time I met already important people for the future, because I joined a dance group called Messing, and that was the group of Harry de Wit and Beppie Blanket. Maybe you know those names. Beppie is a dancer, and she did the choreography of the opera of Misha Mengelberg last year, about the cows, the koeien. So I met her, in there, and Harry de Wit was a musician who works now a lot with the Ivo van Hoven. That's a very famous director. He's from Belgium, but also living here in Amsterdam, I think. I think he did the David Bowie thing in New York.
Okay.
So he's like really big, and he's like Harry de Wit is still one of his main musicians, But so that's the people I met and worked with. And I was very unsure, like, oh, should I become a musician? And they said, like, you should try it. And so that was, I was still studying, but the first year I liked, but then I thought, like, what can I do with this study? Nothing, You can teach on school or do research work, but I didn't want to do that. So I thought, like, I better try to become a musician, And actually, what happened then? Yeah, so that was like 78, 79. I was like, should I stop my study? And I didn't tell my parents, so that was also like, kind of freaky. And I already invited them to concerts, I remember one of the first paid concerts was with a dance group in an open air theater not so far from Groningen, and my whole family they came, to check me out, and then of course I had write-ups in the paper, and I was on the radio already, and interviews and blah blah blah, new talent, whatever, So that was happening. So and then I dared them to tell, like 1 year later, I stopped my study and I decided to become a musician. What? Are you crazy? Or we never support your instrument. And they bought my trombone when I was, I think, 20 or something, or 21. So they bought a trombone for me. Yes, so I was still really young, early 20s, when I already was professionally playing around Groningen, and also with the dance group I already went on tour to Denmark in 78 and early 79. We met some British musicians from who also worked with the dancer, Phil Waxman, you know him?
Yeah.
So they had a group called Chamber Pot, and they worked with the dancer, and they were playing in Groningen, and we kind of invited them to work together, and we did some projects together. It was really nice. That was all still in the 70s, and one of the last projects I did in 1980 with them was also in Groningen, and then there was also like people like Butch Morris added, because he was a friend of Harry de Wit, and Ab Baas was added, so I was playing already with Ab then, and Ab, because Harry de Wit was playing in a group in Rotterdam called the Bunker Sextet, which was a group from the jazz club there called the Jazz Bunker.
Okay.
It was like at the water, like somewhere underneath the bridge, like really a scary place, but legendary. All still in the 70s. So there was one moment. This group was. How do you say that? The Bunker Sextet was disbanded, and the remains became another group, Cumulus.
Okay.
So that was with Ab and Mariette Roepen van der Voort, also saxophone and flute player. And in that group, they asked Larry Fishkind, who was then in ICP. And he just arrived in Amsterdam, and they said they were playing in the Volharding. There was a Volharding connection. That was the group of Louis Andriessen, the composer.
Yeah.
So that was a connection. So Harry de Wit was the piano player of that band. So we decided to start a new band called Cumulus, with a drummer called Petro Nikirui, from Australia who was just here living in Amsterdam, and a sextet, really nice. We played like 3-4 years, never brought out an LP, you know. So yeah, it would be interesting to bring out some material from that period. I still have some on tape. But,
nice.
Yeah, so that's still when I was in Groningen. And becoming a professional, and then it was 1980. I was still there, and I got a phone call from Ray Fiskins already checked me out. Hey, you want to play with ICP? Yeah, of course, I know. And then so I got a phone call from Misha in my student's house. Somebody called Mengelberg called you. Can you call back? I said, yeah. Oh. Yeah, so I called Misha. Yeah, hello. Yeah, can you join our group because our trombone player can't make some gigs, and they had like 6 or 7 gigs lined up in 2 weeks, something like that. Yeah, that was in May 1980. So, and since then I'm in that group. Yeah. And that was like who was in that group? Yeah, Harmen Misha, Larry Fishkind, me. And then a lot of saxophone players, Sean Bergin, Keshe van Maslak, also known as Kenny Millions. Okay. You know him? Yeah. He lives now in, I think, Tampa or one of the Fort Lauderdales. So he was there, and some Peter Bruidsman, of course, a trumpet player who I forgot the name from. Maurice Horsthuis was in it. So 10 people, and everybody was making a lot of noise, especially Han and Bruidsman and some other guys. Yeah. And I thought like, wow, this is fantastic. And one of the first concerts was recorded for TV because Misha had a kind of they made a program about him. So I'm there, you know, I think the first, or no, it was not the first concert, the third or something like that. So you can also see me. It's on internet also. Yeah. Cool. So that was one of my first ICP things in the BIM house.
Nice.
And I was still in Groningen. So when I went with ICP, I slept on the floor in Misha's house. You know, and then I found out he had a family. I knew he had a wife, but he didn't tell that he had a daughter. So one of the times I slept there, I thought a ghost was coming in, but that was his daughter, and she was also like, huh? She didn't know I was there, and she was like, 10 years younger than me, but like, huh? Her father didn't tell. There was somebody sleeping in the middle of the night, and she woke up to go to the toilet or something like that. Yeah. And I was also like, who's that?
Yeah. So how did working with like Misha and ICP kind of influence you as a young musician? Like maybe philosophically or anything like that?
That was a band I always wanted to join, you know, and I also must tell you a very, how do you call it, nice influence of mine is that I met the trombone player Joep Maassen in Groningen. He, from day one on, and we decided to have a trombone duo immediately. So we played for a couple of years, like every week, hours and hours, making tunes, and sometimes I think in that time I also put down ideas for pieces or some notes, but I didn't know how to do that. And at a certain moment I decided not to do that anymore. I think I even wrote a piece for Cumulus. And Abba said, oh wow, that was a nice piece, but I can't even remember what it is, you know. but you know, and then I already knew like, this being a player and a composer, I don't want to tell anybody what to play, you know. I only wanted to communicate them by playing. So by improvising. But of course, the way we improvise here is there's a lot of basics are from counterpoint. Michael Moore always calls it counterpoint improvisation. That's not like classical counterpoint, but more like when somebody plays a line, you react on that line, or you make another line going together with that line. So no parallel bullshit, or unison. That's it's not forbidden, but don't do that all the time. You know what I mean. And so that makes the music really how do you call it? Yeah, fresh always, because you never know what the other players are doing. So when it's like making a story. And but I was actually telling about the trombone player, how important he was, and he died in '83 in this terrible car crash. 3 musicians died. That was Harry Miller, the bass player. So that was a little bit later. But actually he was, in that time I was in Groningen, people were leaving also. So the first ones who left were Harry and Beppie. They went to Dordrecht, I think. So they were leaving, and then also Joep, he went. He said like, oh, I want to go to Amsterdam, and I was already in ICP, but he went like 1 year earlier to Amsterdam, and how do you call it? And he liked to be in a kind of action scene. What is it? The squatting scene and how do you call it? Political action. And so he met all those, for me, wrong people. I would say like, I wouldn't say communist, but that scene. And they were kind of taking over the whole BIM organization also a couple of years later. And I always was really opposed to that. Like, that's not good. Like most of those players, they couldn't play at all. It was more a political action. So he joined that part of the thing. There was like also a workshop orchestra called the Boventone, which for young players in the whole country, and a little bit based on the Volharding and people like that. And they also asked me to join that band, but I said after one rehearsal no. And I thought they were very arrogant, and some players, and we were the dumb provincials. But I thought, fuck you, I can play better than you. First junior instrument and play softer, motherfucker. So I was still studying, so I thought like, I don't go to Amsterdam and hang around in people's places and how do you call it, and get a headache from this rehearsing, like. So I stayed but he took the chance to go with that band, and so he joined that scene and blah blah blah. And then I was joining ICP, which was the counterpoint of that, and actually Misha liked our trombone duo really much, so he asked also Joep to join the band. So he is on the Japan recording.
Okay.
So that was actually the first ICP one, which was brought out with me. That was in '82, and Michael Moore was just in the band. He and Kesje van Maslak, Breutsman, Maurice Horstenhuis. Toshinori Kondo was a guest because he kind of organized the tour. Larry, of course, but no bass player and no cello yet. So it was the only string was Maurice. So he had to compete with all those Misha and Maurice. They were like the softest instruments. They had really to compete with the loud ones like Breutsman and Ham. But then from that band, ICP started to develop, but Misha was writing a lot of music in those days, and he was searching for the right people for his band. So he had already me, in the horn section, and Michael came in, and Kesje van was also okay, but also really cocky or not playing for the band, but more for himself. Maurice came also with tunes, and from that angle the band grew. So and actually people like Steve Lacy sometimes joined. He lived in Paris, but sometimes joined ICP. So that was very interesting. And he came with Monk material, and I remember we played Skippy in those times, like Skippy. That's interesting because we never played it again. Only with this first band I was in, and then Misha. I think somebody else brought that because I'm not sure. Maybe even Radu Malfatti, but because he could play it, he could play Skippy. Like I was fucking around with. But anyway, so and Misha also had the Herbie Nichols connection, and that was I think in '83 we played in the special how do you call it feature for Misha with the Herbie Nichols material with there was 3 trombones. It was a bigger extended group also with Lacey. George Lewis was there because he was like kind of studying here with the Electronic Studios time. He was already connected to and George I already knew before I went to Amsterdam. I heard him and Ray Anderson already in the 70s with when they played with Gregson. Because in Groningen was also a very good jazz festival in those times, and the Jazz Marathon it's called, and all the American groups played there, like the really big ones, from Frank Wright, I remember, till Art Ensemble of Chicago and Sun Ra, and to mention Gregson with his big band. So that's where I met. I listened to them. I didn't know them personally, but George I met already. I remember when I had my first solo recording out. He was there when it was presented. Like it was me and Nam Benning presenting it together because we were asked to have a solo album on the new label of the recording engineer Dick Lucas. Data it's called.
Okay.
He had a new label, and so that was 82, 83, and so a lot of things were happening then. I was in Amsterdam, and actually my trombone colleague Joep, he met a wife, and he was living in a very small room. So his room was coming free, and he said, "Come to Amsterdam." So that was August 1980. So I could take his room, like a really funky small room, but good rent, like you can't compare it with now. It was really cheap, and the city was also not poor, but some neighborhoods were, in the east that was like only junkies and squatters were living there. So it was not a high standard thing, but I could play my instrument there. And it was central, and so I lived there for 3 years, and then I could take over another apartment from Mark Cherrick, No, he's a British musician, but also living here. There were a lot of people from England were also living here, or and South Africa also, blah blah blah. So he was also like with his. Then I think he was just married, and they decided to move to Germany, something like that. So I could have their apartment again. I could play my instrument there, and it was low rent. So that's how I nested in Amsterdam in the early 80s, and in like I think 81, I was already asked by Maarten Altena, who I met via ICP. He was one of the guests on one of the concerts, because it was like a pool. We played. I remember in those days we played a lot with people like Derek Bailey. He was mostly a guest. Bruidsman was he could whenever he could join the band. Lacey was there. Yeah, George Lewis. Yeah, so there were then two or three trombones. Yeah, that was even before Joep went into our band. But what is it? Losing track.
I had a question because at the BIM house I saw a lot of Misha's compositions.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And since you talked about having trouble, reading traditional music, how did you find reading Misha's like graphic scores and things
that's
like
easy.
Yeah.
It's easy, but in those days when he really was composing a lot, I remember we had like sometimes weekly rehearsing sessions in the old BIM house. We met at a coffee shop. Called the deftige mensen. That's like the chic people we call them, but it was like a Jewish shop where you could have very nice meat rolls with pastrami and warm meat, and we met there, and then always half of the band came too late, and then we went to the BIM house, just a couple of 100 meters, and rehearsed like for a couple of hours, and then Misha explained his music. We played it, and he said, "Oh, I hear something wrong." There's always somebody playing a wrong note. Let's try it again. Blah, blah, blah. And sometimes he thought, he knew exactly what the music should sound like before he even heard it first, And sometimes he forgot a sharp or a flat, sometimes. But that was really exceptional.
Yeah.
And he heard it immediately, like, hey, there's something wrong. Boom. Do it again. Oh, that's again wrong. And then sometimes I thought, like, oh yeah, Misha, shouldn't be this. Oh yeah. He looked like, oh yeah, I forgot. Boop.
Yeah. Was it like the kind of collaboration amongst ICP in those like kind of early days, and would Misha bring a tune and he would take like someone would have an idea and he would be cool with that, or was it very much play?
Play the notes. But there was already so much openness in the notes. Like sometimes there was arrangements of tunes, like the whole series of Nichols pieces and Monk pieces. Yeah, Monk actually was the time when Up came into the band, because before there was Steve Lacy, and Misha kind of liked Up's playing, and Up also played soprano in those days, so he was playing and tenor and soprano, and he could read really well and improvise really well, but still was searching for his direction. So that was a very interesting time, and Michael and me, we were the three horns then. Yeah, there was a horn section of three in the so the actually ICP became a little bit smaller. It was like middle 80s, and I think Ernst Reiziger joined the group, and then the strings there was a string trio because Larry was not kicked out, but Ham didn't want to play with Larry anymore because he was dragging too much. He was complaining night after night, so they decided, like, boom, let's have a bass player, and Ernst Glieren was already playing a lot with other groups with Ham. So Ham said, I want Ernst in a group. So then it was like a string trio, which was the beginning of this thing, strings and horns, and now it's a little bit more extended, but I think that was a sextet even, or 6 or 7 people, and later on it became 10, and when I first joined ICP it was also 10, like only 3 or 4 survivors, and for the rest different people. Sometimes even Maarten Altena. So he joined one of our concerts and heard me for the first time, and then he invited me immediately for his group. That was for the quartet, because Maurice Horsthuis, he was in the quartet and he wanted to lead the group. He wanted to be more independent and start his own projects. And they asked me instead. So that was Paul Termos was in that group. Me, Maarten Altena, and Maud Sauer, hobo, an English horn player. But so that was also very interesting, having a small group with acoustic players, with 3 winds and a bass. That was like, wow, fantastic. And later on we even had a better quartet with Maatje ten Hoorn, Michael Moore, Maarten and me. That was a quartet I liked even more. And then of course he decided to have his bigger group. That was the octet. I also was asked. They first had another trombone player, Giancarlo Schiaffini from Italy. But then he decided, I want Wolter. So I was also in the quartet and the octet, and it had people like Lindsay Cooper from bassoon from England. She was played with people like Fred Smith, this kind of. Kenny Wheeler was in the group.
Oh, really?
Michael Moore, Paul Termos, Vetcher. No, he came later. Guus Jansen was in the group. Paul Termos. Maud Sauer. Yeah, so his quartet was in it, plus some edit people. And we also played in those days already with people like John Zorn, and who was not completely unknown in those days. I think Maarten was the first time who introduced him in Europe. So, and that was nice. I can remember we did Cobra. He just made that piece.
Yeah.
So that was a project with a kind of double quartet. That was in '83 or '4. Also with Michael. That was the first time Vetcher was joining the group. So that was, you hear a lot of different names, but they all overlap. You know, we played in a lot of different groups with different music because there were so many composers. You know, you had the Guus Jansen's big group. I was also joining later on. He had a septet. I was not in, but later on I was in the bigger groups, and also even in his smaller groups. I was always in the Paul Termos tentet. And they all left the other groups because they wanted to be more independent, have their own thing. Of course I was already in ICP. I was in, and I played also like the Harry Miller Quintet, which was South African music, Kwela music, with Sean Bergin. I played in not a rock band, but it's called J.C. Tans and his Rockets. That's kind of a jump and jive band, a little bit based on Jimmy Lunsford music. We also played Jimmy Lunsford tunes, and a lot of tunes written by Ernst Glierum. He was the bass player of the band and provider of almost a lot of material, like making arrangements. So it was all at the same time, and every band wanted me, so at a certain moment I had to make the decision, I don't go into new bands. So I was like, no, I can't do it. No, I don't want to play with you, something like that. That's a little bit stupid because then you block the whole thing.
Well, I mean, if you're busy too.
I was too busy, but I could have said, sorry, I can't join that band because I was not so diplomatic in those times.
Oh, okay.
There were the main groups were of course ICP, Maarten Altena, and I also did still dance projects with Harry de Wit, Beppie Blanken, but that were groups here based in Amsterdam. We played tours in theaters around the country, and then you had a couple of months of work, and they worked in those days with live bands. It was in the high times of the subsidy world. There was a lot of small ensembles, also crossover from classical music or contemporary rhythm music and improvised together, and that's not existing anymore. So in those times a lot of people from outside the country knew like, oh, Holland, that's where it's happening.
Yeah.
In theater, in dance, in music, you know. And yeah, a lot of students came also to the conservatories to pick it up, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's how it goes.
Yeah. So what do you think about this younger generation of improvisers? Because it's huge. There's
Yeah.
a lot of young players.
No, like 10 years ago, I would have said like, oh, there's no interesting new players, which was also true.
Mm.
But suddenly, they come from all around,
Yeah.
and that's yeah, that's the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you know, like. So it's like kind of opening up, and you know, don't forget that most conservatories do a lot of still this terrible bebop music,
Yeah.
you know. But even they are opening up by now asking people like me or Michael Moore to teach.
Yeah.
Like I'm now teaching an Arnhem improvisation and solo play, which was not in their curriculum. So I made my own corner. And very talented students. They also come to improv sessions here in Amsterdam. You know, that's yeah. 10 years ago, that was unheard of. Yeah, so it's an interesting period now. Like, and I think also the Dutch Improv Academy, which we were putting together with ICP, Doek, and Big Ben Braam, Michiel Braam. They all were in the same office on the Prinsen Island, in the old office of Doek, which existed till December. And we had to leave because of losing money, blah blah blah. How do you say that? Losing track. What was it? Oh yeah, the Dutch Improv Academy. I think that's also one of the reasons people know about this.
Yeah,
yeah, and it takes some time, you know. Like I was teaching in the first and second thing, and then it was already like yeah, a lot of South Americans, like half Sao Paulo came, you know, like. They wanted to come with 20 people, but that was a little bit too much, you know. Like, oh, come with 8, you know. I think we even choose some, like, oh, they can come by instrumentation.
Yeah.
Not 10 guitars and 2 drums.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yes. So and yeah, maybe also the teaching is interesting, you know. Like there's more interested in. How do you call it? Openness.
Yeah.
Not like just one thing. Like pick out a lot of different influences, and you learn from them anyway, and you can choose yourself what you want to do, and that seems to work. You know, that was always my thing. I always did that. Like I only played the things I really liked. Never like, oh, you join this band. No, I was kind of critical.
Yeah.
But thanks to joining bands like ICP, Mate Altena. Yeah, I also played in the Tegelovendi Quintet. You know, another composer from an older generation, like even older than Misha, or a little bit like that. Yeah, but there are so many bands I played in. Sometimes really short, and other bands they never got any work. You know, that's also happening. And in those days you still could play a lot in Holland, but that's completely over. It's like what kind of a wasteland. There's also new things popping out, but that's places like this where they can't guarantee you money.
Yeah.
And I tend not to do that. A lot of my colleagues they still play everywhere, but I think that's not good for the scene.
How so?
Yeah, I'm kind of critical about that. And I'm not an amateur, you know.
Yeah, do you think it encourages not paying musicians when like really, like high class musicians play for
You
free.
can,
and
you
stuff.
can on like everybody does that on tours. You know, when you have days off, you try to fill them.
Mhm.
Like you try to get like a sleeping place where you don't have to worry about paying money
Yeah.
and or an extra gig. You know, with a little bit of money. But I've done it in the States also. But you can do that as a solo player, but not when you play in a group.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, on my solo tours, I just checked it out. Like, oh, we'll play for the door, and I ended up every gig they gave me $200. That was not, and sometimes there were 5 people, so they paid it from their own pockets without saying anything.
Yeah.
You know, and there's no contract, but in the States it's more common. That's like a kind of network.
Yeah.
Playing people's houses.
Mhm.
Yeah, there is a little bit money. Yeah, but here there's no money at all. Like,
Yeah.
that's not good. Yeah, and like the young kids, they don't want to pay entrance. They think everything is for free. The
Mhm.
internet generation, you know, free downloads, CD sales. Nobody buys a CD. You know, oh, I can copy it from internet or whatever. You know.
Yeah.
Not our music, but you still have to buy that.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that's also a strange thing. I'm a little bit worried about, you know, like why bring out a CD if nobody? Yeah, you can always sell like 500 to the freaks. I call them, you know, that's the people who buy anything, or you know, the real fans. They want to have a complete collection of whatever.
Yeah.
So the first 500 you get off really, but the second pressing,
Yeah.
and now it's like sometimes mostly I forget to bring my CDs to gigs, like because I never sell, or the last year or two it's like that. So that's a new thing, but yeah, and getting gigs it's not easy at all. And I'm not a cultural how do you call it? Yeah, I never would call or make contact with the organizer. They have to make contact with me. Then I know for sure they want me. So I'm lucky this is still happening. But like I don't do what people like how do you call it? But somebody like Ken Vandermark.
Yeah.
Only like networking. I don't do that at all. Now maybe now with joining Facebook, but yeah, I joined Facebook in 3 weeks ago, so it's like booming.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm sharing only music videos and a lot of photos I find on the internet. Like wow,
Yeah.
and, you know, there's so much to find. Also from the festival here we did last week. So maybe that will create more interest.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people they know me from, you know, especially from the States. I'm very unknown here in Holland or in Europe. I never had a solo tour here. Of course I play on the festivals, but it's with ICP or with other bands and some German bands also, like Frank Latkowski. That's the Cologne scene. Or they all moved to Berlin, but when they were in Cologne, it's like Frank Latkowski, Karl Ludwig Hübsch. You know the tuba player?
No, I don't know.
No. We have a very nice trio, but also no work. Yeah, and then there's a violin player from Cologne I play sometimes with, you know, so that's still happening, you know, after 10 or 15 years, or 20 even. Yeah.
So what was your experience like playing with Anthony Braxton a few years back?
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
But Anthony we know from the early days you know, and he actually that was mostly from ICP. Anthony was sometimes a guest also. not a lot of times, but yeah, and actually we did a lot of because Anthony and Misha were 10 years apart, and I think their birthday was one day apart.
Oh yeah.
So so we had 2 or 3 times Anthony on his birthday. He loved that.
Yeah.
Like during maybe when he became 60, I think also. And then the 70 and 80, that was the Duke Festival.
Yeah.
So Brixton, we know from the early 80s on. And of course, George was playing with him in those days. I think that was also a connection, and he was also connected to Maarten Altena, and later we did a project in the 90s with Altena, with the Altena Ensemble, which was like 8 or 9 people. The American Connection, we did like in 2 years we invited people who really wanted to work with this. So that was Braxton, John Zorn, Butch Morris, and Roscoe Mitchell. So we did like a block of concerts. It was international. We played some festivals and a week of concerts. And we always played in the BIM house. We always played in Antwerpen. There was a venue, and we always played in Utrecht. So there were always 3 things plus what was coming up. So that was the first time I really worked with Braxton for a longer time. It was very interesting. But how do you call it? Yeah, but it's music. It's not. I wouldn't say unplayable, but I know when you work with classical musicians, they want to nail everything, but he sees music more like a fluent thing. Like he's also like directing, but it's not like 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's the tempo is like, and that's fantastic. I love it. It's and it's not easy to play, but it's easy to lose control. But you think like, oh, are we here or there? But he doesn't care about it. With other bands, it's like it has to be really exact, and but he has a complete other method, and which is more like jazz music, also, or fluent lines, or I don't know.
Yeah. How was
it was nice.
How was some of the younger players on that gig, like Ono and Kaya? Didn't they play with?
With the Duke. They did really well. Yeah. But they were, of course, like intimidated. Like they were so young. I recognized it also when I first, did with ICP those difficult Nichols pieces. I was also sitting next to George. Oh, I can't play this, and he said, "Oh, don't worry, just fake it." And I thought, oh, I never will forget it. And then I could play it, of course, but you don't worry about it. It doesn't matter at all. I mean, of course it matters, but the notes are less important than you think. I mean, they are important, but technically, when you can't play them, you just play what you can play. So, and that helps a lot, and then you find out you can play all the notes, because you are more relaxed and you're not worrying about it, because when you're stressed, forget it. So that's also what I want to teach my students, when you play rhythm music, the notes, what is it? It's just notes on the paper. They don't sound. It becomes something when the notes sound in a band, and then you can really work with it. And then it makes also sense, because you hear other players also playing other notes or the same ones, and you have to time them together, or and that's an interesting process. So that's different than classical music, which is you have to really nail it. And it's more flexible. And when you leave some out, that's also good, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, you go for playing them all, but sometimes that's not possible.
Yeah. Well, that mentality seems very much like in the like improviser or jazz world, the non-academic kind of jazz approach to things, where like what happens in the band, like you don't have to play the entire melody. You don't have to play like
Yeah,
I mean
yeah.
it's open. It's
Yeah.
improvised. It's not this like
But
bebop
you
mentality.
you can use the material, and of course I always use any material.
Yeah.
Also, when I improvise with the notes, I still look at them. Certain intervals I pick out, or yeah. So you still play with the notes of the piece, you
Mhm.
know. But it's also the way it's written. When it's like a chord scheme with a melody, you play different than a kind of abstract. Uh, uh, yeah, like let's say it's a modern music piece.
Mhm. Yeah.
It will sound different, you know.
For sure.
Yeah, but either way is fine with me, you know.
Mhm.
I always do my own stuff, but I always also adapt to the music, what needs the music,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. Like you have to feed it, of course.
Mhm.
Otherwise, nothing is happening. When you just play the notes, there's nothing happening.
Yeah.
It's communication and. Yeah, and that's also why I play so much with mutes, and that's sound mutilation, or like coloring,
Yeah.
coloring the
Changing the
Yeah,
sound of the
yeah,
trombone,
yeah.
different timbres.
different timbres.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it as a painter who uses different colors to visualize
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So with music, it's very important to have. Yeah, but that's my style also, you know. And I realize a lot of trombone players, they just have one thing they play, you know,
Mhm.
like fast or with one timbre or one color.
Mhm.
They never change their color. But I like more the approach of let's say it's more related to the old blues. What is it? The old school playing, like before bebop,
Yeah.
swing, and even New Orleans. What is it?
Second line kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Brass band.
Rough playing.
Yeah.
And that's my style, and that's also what I recognize in players like George and George Lewis and Ray Anderson. You know, that they were, and of course Roswell Rudd, and I also played not frequently, but he was sometimes a guest with ICP also, and Abbas is a good friend of him. He did tours with him with this trio. Then we met also. Very nice. And, you know, a lot of common interest.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yes, so those are my influences.
Yeah.
And then the older players, but mainly sound-wise and playing-wise from the Ellington band.
Yeah.
And a couple of them I met also. Britt Woodman, I met as one of my heroes. In a Holland festival thing here in Holland, with the Mingus big band, with Gunther Schurer.
Oh,
And
nice.
it was Epitaph, the piece was called, and with all those ex-Mingus players and some players from here. Myself, Michael Moore was there, David Quecksilver, some other players. That was, and Britt Woodman was also there, you know, like. And then half a year later he died, and here in Amsterdam he collapsed during the rehearsal. They had to bring him to hospital, and I met him there. You know, it was just 1 week of rehearsal and 2 gigs, I think, in the Concertgebouw, and then he was hospitalized. So I went a couple of times to visit him, and I thought, oh, that doesn't look good. His lungs, what is it?
Do you have lung cancer or something?
No. What is it?
Pneumonia?
Yeah, pneumonia. But like he was taking pills, and then it. But that's not good. You know, you have to recover. Otherwise you die. Yeah. So that, and he was already in his 80s, I think. But still, fantastic player. Yeah, and another one I met was Mr. Cooper in what was that? Tampa, St. Petersburg. He's from there,
Okay.
so he had like a weekly gig, and I was on a solo tour playing there, and as a surprise, they took me to the cafe where he had his weekly gig, and I met him on with ICP when we did this Nichols thing. He was the only one of other bands coming to us, like to George and me, like, wow, I really like you guys playing. Wow, 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 what a fantastic band! And he still remembered that. And I was entering and said, oh, that guy. You know, that was 30 years before. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, and of course he said, oh, George, let's play together now. You know, like fantastic. So I played the whole night with him.
Nice.
Yeah. But I think he also died not so long ago. Yeah, but it was. Yeah, so that's what I hope, that I am still able to play when I'm 80 plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's only 20 years.